tragedy happened here, on this street. The original houses have long been demolished and the street has changed its name. But attitudes have changed as well. If you were to tell anyone living here of the horrific events that took place many years ago, they may well be shocked, but they would recognise it as a familiar story. In 1834, when people in the country picked up the Times newspaper and learnt about these tragic events, this would have felt beyond their worst nightmares. An inquest was held here at the Three Kings pub in Clerkenwell, where it was recorded as a murder-suicide. But what on earth possessed Johann Steinberg to commit such a hideous crime? We can only wonder. Steinberg originally arrived in London from Hamburg, where he ran a successful business making whips and walking canes. He set up business here and had already married an Englishwoman before 15-year-old Ellen Lefevre entered his life. Her alcoholic father had just hanged himself and she was destitute. The Steinbergs gave her a roof in exchange for some household help. Soon after, Ellen and Johann fell in love. After Mrs. Steinberg found out about the affair, they left to set up house together. Steinberg continued to provide for his wife. Indeed, she later testified to his kind and generous nature, although others spoke of his passionate and violent behaviour. It seems that he was involved in some business transactions that weren't going too well. He often expressed fears of impending ruin. He had 4 young children with his new mistress. Was this heightened anxiety all it took to tip him over the edge? We'll never know. So now it was time to bury the dead. Steinberg had committed suicide, so was to be buried, according to custom, in a pauper cemetery in the dead of night with no Christian service. The burial party entered the graveyard in Ray Street, Clerkenwell, as usual, through the butcher's house, who kept his stables and slaughterhouse nearby. The local people could not come to terms with the atrocity that had occurred in their midst. A swelling crowd of onlookers hissed and growled. The police struggled to keep them at bay, so pretended they were burying an old lady to confuse the angry mob. The usual practice when burying a suicide corpse was to drive a stake through the heart. Yet that night the gravediggers dug a hole in the ground and simply tipped Steinberg's body into it, still wrapped in the blood-stained clothes in which he died, although some had snipped away parts of his undergarments to provide mementos of this gruesome occasion. They had just started to lay some earth over the body when one of the burial party lurched forward, clutching an iron mallet, and bludgeoned Steinberg's skull again and again and again. The funeral of Ellen and her children was a different affair. Some people who knew the family and many who didn't contributed towards a Christian funeral in St.James's Church, Clerkenwell. And so we see their gravestone still in the corner of the churchyard, but much decayed. But that is not quite the end of the story. After the murders, the landlord let the house at a discounted rent. The new tenant soon got to work. He obtained some of the victims' clothes and stuffed them with wax dummies, then laid them on the floor in a reenactment of the murder scene, complete with a butcher's knife and original bloodstains. He then opened his doors for paying visitors to gawp at these grisly exhibits. Queues snaked down the road, and he raked in £50 on the first day. Appalled neighbours protested at the town hall and eventually forced them to stop. Quite Quite right, you must be thinking. The tragic story of Ellen and her 4 children does finally end there. I don't think you can ever underestimate the public's taste for horror and disgust. The following year, in 1835, a Frenchwoman named Marie Tussaud opened an exhibition in London displaying her collection of wax dummies. She had perfected her craft from making death masks of guillotined aristocratic heads in the French Revolution. She kept the most notorious exhibits of murderers and the murdered in a special room known as the Chamber of Horrors. It proved to be a most popular tourist attraction. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. And if you would like to hear more enthralling stories of London and its history, please subscribe to my channel, Hello London Life. Hope to see you soon.